So
Diane Wheeler wants to know if you know anything about the property that is now called Ravello's Restaurant, what it used to be.
That was Harry and Edna Cutting's farmhouse. And I used to go to school, the first grade through the fourth grade at the Cutting Schoolhouse. And every morning, some of the boys would volunteer to carry a pail over to either Harry Cutting's or Elton Cross's, whichever, didn't matter which way we went, to get a pail of water. And this water was our drinking water for the day at school. And so Edna was always glad to see us, and she would kind of like to visit, but if we took too long, we'd kind of get in trouble when we got back to school that we took too long, so we couldn't really hear her out, you know. And sometimes Harry was there, and that was even worse because he wanted to catch up on the local news and whatever, and that's the way it was.
So what kind of farming did Edna and Harry do?
Oh, same as everybody else in the valley. They kept 6 or 8 cows, a team of horses, and grew a garden and whatever, the same as everybody else did around here, and kind of had fun at what they were doing.
And who are the people who own the Roadhouse Restaurant?
Oh, this was,
Haskell.
yeah, Herbert, and what's her name?
Anyway, tell me the difference between the Haskell's farmstead and the Cuttings farmstead.
Okay, so going to school every morning, we walked to school, and every morning we'd go by Herbert's place. With Herbert was a very meticulous farmer. Mm-hmm. Every job was done on time, and everything was always picked up neat as a pin around Herbert's place.
Kind of like the Wheeler farm, huh?
Well, and Harry done about the same thing, you know, 6 or 8 cows, a team of horses, and made some maple syrup in the springtime and all this sort of thing. The same everybody did around here. But Harry was a little more laid back, you know. If he didn't get a job done one day, didn't worry about it, you know. If his hay forks sat outside, stomped in the ground for a week or two, didn't matter, you know. That's, you know, and there might be a little clutter around his yard, or the grass won't cut just right, or whatever, but didn't bother him. He had fun just the same. Yep.
Didn't you have a story about the Cuttings getting a new car?
Oh yeah, this is kind of neat. Of course, like I say, both of these guys made maple syrup in the spring and all that. Well, this one particular year, forgot his name.
Herb and whatever.
No,
Herb and Harry.
Harry.
Harry and his wife had very good luck with their maple, you know, made a lot of nice syrup, sold it all for a good price, and he says to Edna, said, "Why don't we buy a new car?" And so he had Edna call down to the Ford dealership, the Brown's Garage down here in town, that they might be interested in buying a car. And of course, it wasn't long before the salesman was right up there and explained all this car, you know, how it worked, Model A Ford, you know, and it was how the doors would shut, explained how the heater worked, and operated the windshield wiper for him, you know, and anyway, that was cool. Anyway, they buy the car, salesman leaves, and Harry says to Ed, why don't we go for a ride in the new car? Yeah. And so they climb in the thing. They come down the Dover Road, which is a dirt road back then, and it's still kind of spring of the year, so there's some mud and potholes and ruts in the road. So they're not going very fast. And they get down by Herbert's place, and there's Herbert out there kind of raking the lawn area in front of his barn. His barn sits very close to the road. And so Harry stops. Say, hey Herbert, how you like my new car? And Herbert sets the rake down against the barn there and walks over to this new car and studying it and walks all the way around it and gets back to the driver's door and he says, well, Harry, you look like an old turd on a new shovel. That's kind of the way the neighborhood was back then. You know? You really knew who your neighbors were.
Stella, wasn't that?
Stella was
Herbert's wife,
Herbert.
Stella.
There you go.
Stella was hard of hearing.
Huh?
Yeah. And so she usually had her radio playing full blast, you know, and you could hear the radio. From,
Like when you walk
Yeah.
to school, you could hear the radio going?
yeah, yeah.
Nice.
And of course, being kids of a devilish nature,
No.
we'd always find something to drop on the lawn as we go into school, you know. And of course, when we came back that afternoon, it was always gone.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But they never got cross at us kids, you know. They'd always
Wow.
smiling, take
Your,
it.
your sister Shirley told me one time that Stella always had a beautiful flower garden. And so when they went to school, they might pick her a flower and bring it to her. And she'd always thank them, knowing that it was her flower, of course.
Wow. So since we're sending this to Diane, you were just telling me about the Lake Raponda days when you and Thelma used to ride your bike to Lake Raponda, and when you got there, the crew of people you would see.
Okay, so we're first and second graders, you know.
Uh-huh.
And,
Riding your bike all the way to Lake Raponda in the evenings?
oh, hell yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, in an excursion like this, we didn't have to tell our folks where we were going. 'Cause, you know,
First or
we'd
second grade.
we'd always just naturally show up at supper time and bedtime. You know?
Okay.
And so what you done the rest of the time, I'll just hell out of the way. Fine, you know? Anyway, so we get over there on the hot summer nights. Henry Wheeler, George Kraft, Joe Moore, Joe and Richard Moore would be over there, you know, and these guys are teenagers and raising it, you know, diving in the water, jumping around, splashing hell out of each other, all that sort of thing. And it seemed to be an ongoing contest between Henry Wheeler and George Kraft of who could break the diving board. And either one of these guys could get 10 or 12 feet of air off that diving board, you know, and do perfect flips or double. Henry could do a double flip, you know, with his arms out like this. And it would look like he was atop just spinning on his arms, you know. Weird as hell, but worked slick for him. And anyway, and so one day, of course, Andy Crawford was road foreman here in Wilmington for years and years and years, and he also was the caretaker of the swimming area up there. And so he would always take it on himself to repair these diving boards that got busted up. And so he showed up one day with an elm log that he had cut, and he wanted my father to saw out a diving board that these boys ain't gonna break.
Oh, wow.
And so my dad, this log, I forget if it was 10 or 12 foot long, but whatever. This plank that had come out of this log was 18 inches wide by 10 or 12 foot long. And my dad sawed a taper into it. So at the base of it, it was about 3 inches thick. And at the tip, it was about 1.25 inches.
Oh, wow. So they would have
And
busted the end off.
I remember
Oh, wow.
helping my dad smooth it up out here in the shop on the jointer and the planer. Now this,
Wow.
being a taper, you can't run it through a planer because that's a thickness planer. And so all the edge work had to be done on the jointer. And so we had to pass that thing back and forth across that jointer at least 100 times. It
Oh,
seemed
my
like
God.
heaviest damn thing you ever. Anyway, and so the last I knew, that diving board isn't there anymore, but it served for years until the modern people decided that it wasn't safe to dive into water that was only 4 feet deep. Yeah, we got along great with that thing, but
Yeah, you learned right off quick where the bottom was.
well, most people, after you dove just a little bit, you figured out that you put your hands in front of your face, and your hands would touch whatever you're going to run into.
Right. And
Not your head.
Yeah.
Because your head kind of hurt. It didn't bother your hands running into stuff. And
Well, with your hands out, you don't go too far under the water anyway.
whatever. But anyway, it was decided it was too dangerous. And so that diving board was taken down. But, and I think this is the one that I remember Henry and George getting 10 to 12 feet of air out of them, because that thing would send you.
That's cool.
Yeah.